Hey, Shalom. First and foremost, we give all praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'Shem, Yahushai, Ba'Shem, Hakodash. Double honor to the true leaders of the nation Israel in the last days, Great Millstone, also known as GMS. And Shalom to the Most High's men in four corners of the earth, pushing His word of sincerity and truth. And Shalom to the sisters out there that support and subscribe wholeheartedly to the message of deliverance and salvation of Yahweh, Ba'Shem, Yahushai. The GMS Mississippi. I'm your brother Banyamyan.
Abaya. All right, Khan. Hey, this lesson is going to be entitled Resurrection versus Reincarnation. All right, so when you break down that term resurrection, it goes into the term resurge. Re means back or again, and surge means to rise again. Okay, and what is rising again? Your spirit. Okay, because that spirit is coming back within that same flesh. Hey, shalom, bro, shalom. Okay, now when you think about the term reincarnation, of course, when you break that down, it means back in the flesh. Mm-hmm. That's what that means, back in the flesh. So in order to be reincarnated, you have to actually be procreated by male and female. All right?
And because that word carnate or carnation goes into derives from the Latin and the Spanish of carne, which is flesh. You know, and because what we would call a steak in Spanish, they would call it carne, or like beef, because it's
meat, flesh.
It's meat, is flesh.
All right, hey bro, get 1 Kings 17. We're gonna start verse 17.
This is the book of 1 Kings, chapter 17, verse 17.
Read to 24.
To 24. It says, "And it came to pass after these things, that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick, and his sickness was so sore that there was no breath left in him."
Right, and the reason why there was no breath left in him, because he was deceased. Okay, go ahead, bro.
"And she said unto Elijah, What have I to do with thee, O thou man of Yahweh? Art thou come unto me to call my sin to remembrance, and to slay my son? And he said unto her, Give me thy son. And he took him out of her bosom, and carried him up into a loft where he abode, and laid him upon his own bed. And he cried unto the Lord, and said, O Lord, my power, hast thou also brought evil upon the widow with whom I sojourn, by slaying her son? And he stretched himself upon the child 3 times, and cried unto the Lord, and said, O Lord, my power, I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again."
Right. Let this child's soul come into him again. Now, this is an example of resurrection. Go ahead, bro.
"And the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came into him again, and he revived."
Right. And so, to break down this, you know, the spirit is simple. When you think about the term resurrection, like I stated, that spirit is coming back within that same flesh. All right. So it's, although reincarnation and resurrection are a lot similar, but it's still 2 different formats. Okay, you got something, bro?
No, man.
All right, so let's go to the second example, Mark chapter 5, verse 35 through 43.
It's the book of Mark chapter 5, starting at verse 35. It says, "Nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, neither by..."
Mark 5 and 35? That's Matthew.
It's like
you good.
Mark chapter 5, verse 35. "While he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain which said, Thy daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the master any further?"
Go ahead.
"As soon as Yahushua heard the word that was spoken, he said unto the ruler of the synagogue, Be not afraid, only believe. And he suffered no man to follow him, save Peter and James and John, the brother of James."
Go ahead, bro.
And he cometh to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and seeth the tumult, and them that wept and wailed greatly. And when he was come in, he said unto them, Why make ye this ado and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleepeth.
Right.
And they laughed him to scorn. But when he had put them all out, he taketh the father and the mother of the damsel, and them that were with him, and entereth in where the and he took the damsel by the hand, and said unto her, Talitha kumai, which is being interpreted, damsel, I say unto thee, arise. And straightway the damsel arose and walked, for she was of the age of 12 years, and they were astonished with a great astonishment.
And this is the second example of a resurrection. Okay, so Elijah was a shalom, bro. Elijah was basically able to resurrect the person through the spirit of Yahweh Hashem Shai, as well as Yahweh Shai. All right, and like I stated before, resurrection is nothing when that spirit comes back within that same flesh. Okay, all right, brother. Get Luke chapter 24, 1 through 6.
Is that Luke?
Yeah, Luke chapter 24, 1 through 6.
Okay.
All right, and this account is actually post-resurrection going into our Lord and Savior, Yahweh Shai. Okay?
It's the book of Luke chapter 24, verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
Now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came unto the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them.
Mm-hmm.
And they found the stone rolled away from the sepulchre, and they entered in and found not the body of the Lord Yahweh Shai.
Go ahead.
And it came to pass, as they were much perplexed thereabout, behold, two men stood by them in shining garments.
Mm-hmm.
And as they were afraid and bowed down their faces to the earth, they said unto them, Why seek ye the living among the dead?
Mm-hmm.
He is not here, but is risen.
But is risen. Okay, and the reason why Yahweh Shai was risen, because the Most High gave, the Most High put his spirit back in his body, man.
Right.
Another form of resurrection.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Hey, going into how when the Lord comes back, it says that the grave shall be open.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the scriptures reference that the dead in Yahweh shall rise first, because they're going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
That's right. That's right. Keep going, bro. Stop at 6.
Verse 6. Verse 4, and it came to pass, as they were much perplexed thereabout, behold, two men stood by them in shining garments.
Mm-hmm.
And as they were afraid and bowed down their faces to the earth, they said unto them, Why seek ye the living among the dead?
Right.
He is not here, but is risen. Remember how he spake unto you when he was yet in Galilee.
Right, and the reason why Yahweh Shai was risen, because this was a form of the resurrection. Now, bro, jump down to verse 34 and read to 39. Same chapter.
Luke 24 and 34.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, The Lord is risen indeed, and hath appeared to Simon.
Mm-hmm.
And they told what things were done in the way,
Mm-hmm.
and how he was known of them in breaking of bread.
Continue.
And as they thus spake, Yahweh Shai himself stood in the midst of them, and said unto them, Peace be unto you.
Go ahead.
But they were terrified and affrighted, and supposed that they had seen a spirit.
Go ahead.
And he said unto them, Why are ye troubled? And why do thoughts arise in your hearts?
Go ahead.
Behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself.
Mm-hmm.
Handle me and see.
Right. Behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me. All right. Touch me. See for yourself. Okay. Go ahead. Then this is just furthering the point of the example of the resurrection, or a resurrection. All right. You want to add something, Elder? Go ahead, bro.
For a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as ye see me have.
Mm-hmm.
And when he had thus spoken, he showed them his hands and his feet.
Right, and that's the point. All right, so those are actually 3 examples of the process of a resurrection. All right, and like we stated before, when you break that term down, it means to rise again. All right, that spirit is being placed in that same body, that same flesh. All right, before. Of course, it was summoned to the spirit world, but once the Most High basically gave Elijah that power, gave Yahweh Shai that power, those spirits came back in that same flesh, proving the point of a resurrection. All right. Now, Elder, please jump to Acts 14, 19 and 20.
Acts chapter 14, verse 19.
Mm-hmm.
And there came thither certain Jews from Antioch and Iconium, who persuaded the people, and having stoned Paul, drew him out of the city, supposing he had been dead.
Right, and that's the point. Acts 14 and 19. And there came thither certain Jews from Antioch and Iconium, who persuaded the people, and having stoned Paul, drew him out of the city, supposing he had been dead. Now, Elder, jump to 2 Corinthians, the 12th chapter, and read 1 through 4.
2 Corinthians 12.
Yeah, 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 4.
A second. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 1.
Akim, and we're going to get those precepts as well. The water. All right, go ahead, bro.
It is not expedient for me, doubtless, to glory.
Mm-hmm.
I will come to visions and revelations of the Lord.
Right.
I knew a man in Yahushua about 14 years ago.
Right, and this is actually Apostle Paul speaking of himself. Go ahead, bro.
Whether in the body I cannot tell,
right,
or whether out of the body I cannot tell, the Most High knoweth.
Right.
Such an one caught up to the third heaven.
All right, and how was Apostle Paul summoned to the third heaven? All right, or summoned to the fourth dimension? He was stoned. Okay, and due to the fact of him being stoned, his spirit actually left his body. Exactly. Okay, so he actually died, because death is defined as when the flesh is separated from the spirit. Okay, you got something, Elder? All right, continue, Elder.
And I knew such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I cannot tell. The Most High knoweth. How that he was caught up into paradise and heard unspeakable words, which it is not lawful for a man to utter.
Right, and that's the point. But we know through the process of the scriptures that Apostle Paul's spirit was summoned back within his body. Okay, proving the process of a resurrection. Okay, this is how he was able to, through the spirit, let us know how beautiful the third heaven looked, because he actually witnessed the third heaven, but it was so gorgeous that he could not even verbalize the way it looked. Okay, but like I said, I'm gonna stay on topic. The point is to support through the spirit the process of a resurrection. Got something, bro?
Not here.
All right, now, so we gave 4 accounts or 5 accounts, and just to be safe, several accounts of the process of a resurrection. Now let's go into the reincarnation. And like I stated before, and the elder assisted me as well, reincarnation is nothing but when the flesh receives salakya. It's when the spirit comes back in the flesh, and that flesh is new. Resurrection is when that spirit comes back in the same flesh. But reincarnation is when that same spirit comes back in a different flesh. Okay? Bro, get Malachi chapter 4, verse 5.
Malachi chapter 4, verse 5. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord.
Right, and the reason why Elijah was going to be able to come back through the process of reincarnation. Okay? It's just that simple. All right? It's the same spirit, but he came back in a different body. All right? Got something on that, brother?
Yep.
Jump to Matthew chapter 11. We can read 7 through 15.
Okay. All right. Matthew chapter 11, verse 7. And as they departed, Yahushua began to say unto the multitudes concerning John, what went ye out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken with the wind? But what went ye out for to see? A man clothed in soft raiment? Behold, they that wear soft clothing are in kings' houses.
Right.
But what went ye out for to see? A prophet? Yea, I say unto you, and more than a prophet. For this is he of whom it is written, Behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. Verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, there hath not risen a greater than John the Baptist. Notwithstanding, he that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. And from the days of John the Baptist unto now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied unto John. And if ye will receive it, this is Elias, which was for to come.
Right.
He that hath ears to hear, let him hear.
Right, and this is what Yahushua is saying, that basically you have to have the Holy Spirit in order to understand not only reincarnation, but the process of resurrection. All right, it takes a spiritual mindset, and that measure of faith is given to you by Yahweh Shem Al Shah. But the point of this account is to prove the process of reincarnation. All right, so the reason why Elijah was able to come back upon the earth was through that process. Okay, and he came back as John the Baptist. All right, see the scriptures proves these points. But you, like I stated before, you have to have that spiritual mindset.
I have one for you.
Go ahead, bro.
Matthew chapter 17, verse 12.
Mm-hmm.
But I say unto you that Elias is come already, and they knew him not,
right,
but have done unto him whatsoever they listed.
Now, who is Yahushua speaking of? Go ahead, bro.
Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them.
Right, because he had to go through that same fate. But the point is, how did Elias come back? He came back. That spirit Elias, which goes back to Elijah, came back as John the Baptist. Right?
Then the disciples understood that he spake unto them of John the Baptist.
Right. See, we understood these this process back in the ancient world. All right. But of course, Esau basically stripped it away. Why? Because to further enslave you to do what he wants you to do. Well, if you rebel against your master, which he's proclaimed that he's our master, well, what happens? According to Christian doctrine, you go to hell.
Right.
All right. So basically, it's just nothing but to subvert your mind to keep you subjected to his rulership. All right. Elder, get John chapter 9, 1 through 2.
It's the book of John chapter 9, verse 1. And as Yahushua passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?
Right. So how did this person sin if he was blind? What, since birth? All right. But at the same time frame, if you think spiritually about this account, it's basically showing you the process of reincarnation. All right. It was a spirit that came back through a process of when his father and his mother procreated him through the process of sexual intercourse. Okay, and he came upon the earth. All right, you got something, bro?
No,
all right, Daniel 12 and 13.
All right, it's the book of Daniel, chapter 12. I'll read verse 13. But go thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days.
Right, and so stand in thy lot at the end of the days. So this prophecy is letting Daniel know and letting us know that Daniel was going to return. Okay, because he was going to have to be a prophet in the end time, and the only way he could come back upon the face of the earth is through the process of reincarnation.
Right, and then when you read the book of Esdras, even the prophet Esdras had asked the angel, he said, woe is me, who shall deliver me in those days?
In those days, all right? And how did Esdras know that he was going to come back? How did he know that he was going to need deliverance? Because basically, the Most High showed him visions, but at the same time frame, he understood, most importantly, the process of reincarnation. All right? You got something, bro?
Oh, yeah.
You want to get some of these precepts, bro?
See
what the Oculus posted?
Yeah, this is the book of Romans chapter 6 verse 4. Therefore we are buried with him by baptism into death, that like as Hamashiach was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life.
Beautiful precept, brother. And the reason why he was able to come back from the dead, because the Most High put Yahushua's spirit back in that same body, man. Okay?
2 Maccabees 7 and 14.
Yeah.
So when he was ready to die, he said thus, it is good being put to death by men to look for hope from Yahweh by Shem Yahushua to be raised up again by him. As for thee, thou shalt have no resurrection.
Right. And so how did this that's going into like the Maccabee brothers? The Maccabees. But at the same time frame, he was going to come back on the face of the earth through the process of reincarnation. Because he actually, when he died, his body was summoned to the spirit world and that flesh decomposed.
Right.
All right. But we know through the process of reincarnation that brother was going to come back, and he could be on the face of this earth at this time frame.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. That's a good one too. Matthew 27:51.
Mm-hmm.
And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom.
Right. And the reason why that veil was split into two pieces, because basically what is that saying? That Yahweh Shai, through that sacrifice, made us as priests as well. Go ahead, bro.
And the graves were open, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose.
Right. And the reason why they was able to rise up, because the Most High had actually put their spirits back within their bodies.
Exactly.
Man, because they were dead. So they came out of the graves through the process of what? Resurrection. All right. Because in that account right there, those spirits basically came back in that same flesh. All right. Go ahead, bro.
Matthew 19:28. Jim Yahweh. And Yahweh Shai said unto them, verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel, upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel.
Right, and that's going to be, and you can actually use the resurrection as well as the reincarnation, at the same time frame, because, and the reason why I say that, because, certain brothers are actually going to be delivered in their bodies. Okay, so they're not going to see death, but then you're going to actually have prophets that's going to go through the process of the resurrection. All right, their spirits are literally going to come back within their bodies, and they're going to be summoned to those chariots. Yep. But then the prophets that are alive and still on the face of the earth, they're actually just going to be beamed up, But at the same time frame, it's still the process of reincarnation, because those prophets came back at this time frame. That spirit is still the spirit of old. The only thing that's different is the flesh is new.
Right. And that bring out the point here in 1 Corinthians 14:32. And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets.
There you go.
Hey, because it's that same spirit, And we'll get this one more here. 1 Corinthians 15:12. Now if Yahweh Shai be preached that he rose from the dead, how say some among you that there is no resurrection of the dead?
Right, and the scriptures prove that there's a form of the resurrection of the dead. All right, because Yahweh Shai was resurrected by his father Yahweh. Okay. Anything, bro?
Yeah, I had one more.
All right.
You had anything else?
No, that was it.
Okay. Yep. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 14 verse 35. For after death shall the judgment come, when we shall live again, and then shall the names of the righteous be manifest, and the works of the ungodly shall be declared.
Right, and this is the process of reincarnation. All right, because once you actually perish, you go to the spirit world and you stay there for what, 3 to 4 generations. All right, then your body is actually formulated again through the process of when your father and your mother actually have sex. So your spirit comes back
in the flesh.
Back in the flesh. So resurrection is basically when that spirit rises again. Resurrection is basically when that spirit comes back in the same flesh. All right. And reincarnation is when that same spirit comes back in a different flesh. All right.
Back in the flesh.
Back in the flesh.
Versus being rose or being risen.
That's it. So, hey, Lord willing, y'all are edified, and once again, the water for your participation. All praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Rakakodash. A double honor to the apostles, the elders. Salutations to you, sincere brothers, teaching in truth.